We don't want an emperor. Our countries are sovereign. Those were the words that sent shockwaves through Washington. And they weren't spoken in Moscow or Beijing. They came from Brasilia, while most world leaders tiptoe around Donald Trump's threats. One man is standing tall and unflinching. President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva of Brazil. Once imprisoned. Now a global rebel, Lula isn't backing down. In fact, he's doing the unthinkable, openly defying Trump, daring him to retaliate, and leading a bold campaign against American dominance. And Trump is panicking. But this isn't about coffee or tariffs. This is about something far bigger, the collapse of the global dollar order. The Trump-Lula collision begins. On July 9th, President Donald Trump announced a sweeping 50% tariff on all Brazilian imports, set to begin August 1st. It wasn't framed as economic policy. It was a political ultimatum. Trump tied the move directly to Brazil's prosecution of former President Jair Bolsonaro, a Trump ally now facing criminal charges, and accused Lula's government of staging a witch hunt. His message was clear: drop the charges or face economic pain. But Lula fired back instantly. No U.S. president can tell me what to do, he said in a fiery televised speech. He was elected to govern the United States, not to be the emperor of the world. It was a direct challenge, not just to Trump, but to decades of American hegemony. Why Brazil matters. This isn't some small diplomatic spat. Brazil is no minor player. It's the largest economy in South America, with a $2.3 trillion GDP and a vital trading partner to the U.S. exports to America. Top $36 billion annually. That includes 17% of Brazil's global coffee exports, 42% of its orange juice, 75% of aircraft sales from Embraer, the world's third largest plane maker, 60% of Brazil's machinery and generator, exports 13% of its crude oil tariffs. At this scale don't just hurt Brazil. They hit American companies, construction firms, airlines, grocery chains, and millions of consumers. Embraer's stock dropped 8% overnight. Orange juice futures spiked. Coffee distributors warned of coming price hikes. U.S. manufacturers raised alarms about machinery shortages and rising costs for Brazilian steel and lumber. But Trump isn't just targeting goods. He's launched a Section 301 investigation into Brazil's tech policies, part of a broader push to shield American firms from foreign digital rules. Brazil now finds itself on Trump's hit list, alongside Canada, South Korea, and the EU. Lula responded by activating Brazil's new trade reciprocity law, allowing retaliatory tariffs and tech restrictions on U.S. firms. Washington tried to corner Lula, but Lula turned it into a global rallying cry. The Global South rallies. Trump's tariff war may have sparked an economic fire, but Lula turned it into a political inferno. He's not just defending Brazil. He's challenging America's global dominance, especially the dominance of the U.S. dollar. While China and Russia move carefully, Lula is loud, unapologetic, and fearless. He's openly calling for de-dollarization. And this time, the world is listening. At the BRICS summit in Rio, Lula did more than give speeches. He pushed concrete proposals to create a cross-border payment system in local currencies. He supported Russia's idea of a BRICS financial network, completely independent of SWIFT or the U.S. dollar. And the numbers behind BRICS are staggering. Over 40% of the world's population, 25% of global GDP, massive reserves of oil, gas, and minerals, growing financial institutions beyond Western control. Lula asked the question that echoes across the global South: why do we still trade in dollars? Who decided the dollar was king? Brazil walks the talk. Unlike many world leaders, Lula isn't just talking, he's acting. First, Brazil activated its currency swap agreement with China, This allows Brazilian exporters and Chinese buyers to settle trade directly in yuan and reais, cutting out the U.S. dollar entirely. The swap has already facilitated pulp, oil, and soybean deals. Second, Brazil's central bank has raised the yuan's share of its foreign reserves to over 5%, up from nearly zero just 5 years ago. The yuan is now Brazil's second most important currency after the dollar. Third, Brazilian financial institutions have joined China's alternative to SWIFT. Bocom BBM became the first South American bank to plug into China's cross-border payment system. ICBC has become Brazil's yuan settlement bank. Fourth, Brazil announced plans to issue panda bonds, sovereign debt denominated in Chinese yuan. That's a direct blow to the dollar's role in international lending. Brazil is shifting its financial infrastructure, slowly, deliberately, permanently. And Washington is rattled. The backlash begins. Trump's team is now scrambling. They've launched a full-court media offensive. U.S. think tanks accuse Lula of enabling dictators. Trump's allies in Congress are threatening sanctions. Business leaders are calling it the Lula risk. Behind closed doors, Washington knows what's happening. If Brazil, the largest country in Latin America, succeeds in building an alternative to the dollar, others may follow. Argentina, Nigeria, Indonesia, even Saudi Arabia is reportedly watching closely. This isn't just about BRICS. It's about breaking the dollar's monopoly on global trade. And it's working. In Brazil, Lula's approval ratings have surged. Protesters have rallied in the streets, earning effigies of Trump and Bolsonaro. Political parties across the spectrum, even some Bolsonaro allies, have condemned Trump's interference. For the first time in a generation, U.S. power in Latin America is being openly defied. And Lula isn't retreating. He's pressing forward. The global stakes, let's be clear, the U.S. dollar isn't just a currency. It's a weapon. The world's oil is priced in dollars. Global loans are issued in dollars. Central banks stockpile dollars as reserves. That allows Washington to control financial flows, impose sanctions, and print money without fear of collapse. Lula is trying to break that cycle. He's becoming a symbol of resistance, not only in Latin America, but in Africa, Southeast Asia, and beyond. His speeches, interviews, and G20 appearances are being translated, shared, and replayed by countries that feel shackled by the current financial order. And that's what terrifies Trump. Symbols can be more dangerous than sanctions. While Trump attacks Lula as soft on dictators, the global South sees something different, a leader who refuses to bow. Even India and Indonesia, both historically cautious, have praised Lula's BRICS diplomacy. The IMF and World Bank, long viewed as tools of U.S. leverage, are now under scrutiny. Lula has accused them of keeping poor nations in debt servitude. Brazil has pledged to reduce IMF borrowing and increase investment in the BRICS Development Bank instead. The strategic risk, there are dangers, of course. De-dollarization is not a magic solution. Brazil's growing dependence on Chinese markets and financial infrastructure could create new vulnerabilities. A shift away from the dollar exposes exporters to exchange rate shocks and liquidity risks. And while trading in yuan may boost sovereignty, it could also make Brazil beholden to Beijing rather than Washington. But Lula seems prepared for that risk. In his view, a multipolar world, even one with friction, is better than a unipolar world ruled by American economic coercion. For Trump, this is turning into a nightmare scenario. He once joked that nobody trades in pesos or rubles. But now the dollar's dominance is shrinking. Wall Street analysts have begun sounding the alarm. Goldman Sachs and J.P. Morgan now refer to the Lula effect, a growing risk that nations will seek alternatives to the dollar as political insurance against U.S. interference, and the data backs it up. The dollar's share of global reserves has dropped to its lowest level in decades, now below 59%, according to IMF figures. Central banks from Saudi Arabia to Singapore are quietly diversifying. Trump's tariffs may have been meant to punish Brazil. Instead, they may have launched the most serious threat to the U.S.-led financial system in decades. For years, American leaders assumed that the dollar's supremacy was untouchable. That assumption is now being shattered, not by war, not by revolution, but by a smiling former labor leader in South America who once sat in prison and now stands at the center of a global movement. Lula da Silva has ignited something bigger than Brazil. He's shown that resistance to U.S. financial control is possible, that a different path exists, and that standing up to American tariffs doesn't have to mean economic collapse. It can mean political liberation. So now the question is this: will Lula's defiance spark a new global financial order, or will it provoke a worldwide showdown with the United States? Subscribe for more updates, because this isn't just about Brazil. It's about who controls the future.